Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. Jean-Paul Sartre. You were given a weapon at birth, and no one has ever tried to take it back. Not during war, not during genocide, not during the worst failures of human judgment, not when children suffer, not when systems collapse, not when the innocent are crushed by decisions they never made. The weapon remains in your hand, fully loaded, completely unsupervised. And the most disturbing part is not that you have it. The most disturbing part is that you were supposed to have it all along. Free will was never a gift. Most people treat free will like a privilege. Something earned, something granted by a benevolent creator who trusts you enough to let you choose. But that framing is backwards. Free will is not a reward for being human. It is the structural requirement of becoming anything at all. Think about what happens when you remove choice. You do not get safety. You do not get harmony. You get simulation. A puppet does not grow. A programmed response does not develop character. A scripted decision does not produce coherence. If you cannot choose, you cannot become. And if you cannot become, you are ornamental. The universe you are inside does not value ornamental beings. It values beings who can hold tension, process complexity, make decisions under ambiguity, and live with the consequences of those decisions long enough to extract meaning from them. Free will is not the luxury. Free will is the engine. And engines are dangerous by design. Danger is not a flaw. When a child burns their hand on a stove, you do not blame the stove for being hot. You recognize that heat is a property of fire, and fire has function. Pain is the feedback loop that teaches the child to respect the boundary. Remove the heat, and the child never learns. Pad every surface, eliminate every edge, and you do not produce safety. You produce fragility. Free will operates the same way. It is not broken because it allows harm. It is functional because it allows consequence. Consequence is the only force capable of producing internal regulation. You cannot teach someone to choose well by removing their ability to choose poorly. You can only teach them by letting them feel the weight of what they have done. This is why every attempt to create a world without suffering has failed. Not because the intention was wrong, but because the method misunderstands the mechanism. Suffering is not the enemy of development. Suffering is the resistance that development requires. A muscle does not grow unless it is torn. A mind does not sharpen unless it is challenged. A will does not mature unless it is tested against real stakes. The question is not why suffering exists. The question is why you expected a developmental system to feel comfortable. Consider what happens in your own body when you avoid discomfort, when you refuse to feel the tension of a difficult conversation, when you numb the anxiety of an uncertain decision, when you distract yourself from the weight of responsibility. The discomfort does not disappear. It lodges itself deeper. It becomes background noise. It turns into chronic tension, low-grade fear, a persistent sense that something is wrong, but you cannot name it. That is what happens when consequence is avoided. It does not vanish, it compounds. And the longer you delay the reckoning, the more force is required to undo the distortion. The body knows this. Your nervous system is designed to process difficulty, not avoid it. When you encounter a stressor, your system is supposed to activate, respond, and then return to baseline. That is regulation. But if you chronically avoid the activation, if you suppress the response, if you refuse to let the system complete the cycle, you do not stay calm. You stay compressed. And compression is not peace. It is frozen mobilization. Free will allows you to choose avoidance, but it does not protect you from the biological cost of that choice. The system reflects the consequence with perfect fidelity. You can run from the difficulty, but your body will carry the debt, and eventually the debt will demand payment. The mechanism of consequence. Consequence is not punishment delivered by an external judge. Consequence is the structural feedback of reality itself. It is the way the system shows you what your choices actually produce, not what you hoped they would produce, not what you believed they should produce, but what they structurally generate when executed inside the conditions you are operating within. This distinction is critical. Most people treat consequence as if it is personal, as if the universe is responding to them specifically, targeting them for correction or reward. But consequence is not personal. It is mechanical. It is the echo of your action meeting the architecture of reality. Imagine you are standing in a canyon. You shout. The echo returns. The echo is not the canyon's opinion of your shout. It is not a judgment. It is not a message. It is the sound of your voice bouncing off the structure of the space you are inside. That is what consequence is. The return signal of your choice meeting the edges of the system. And just like the echo, consequence is delayed. There is a gap between the action and the return. That gap is where most people lose coherence. They make a choice, and when the consequence does not arrive immediately, they assume there is no consequence. They interpret the delay as permission, they repeat the choice, they build momentum. And then, when the consequence finally arrives, compounded and amplified by repetition, they experience it as sudden catastrophe. But it was never sudden. It was always coming. The system was always reflecting. They just were not paying attention to the echo. This is one of the reasons free will is so dangerous. It allows you to accumulate debt across time, to build instability slowly, imperceptibly, until the structure can no longer hold the weight. And when it collapses all at once, not because the system is cruel, but because that is how structural failure works. A bridge does not fail gradually. It holds, and then it drops. The failure looks instant, but the stress was accumulating the entire time. Free will allows you to keep adding weight to the bridge, and the system does not stop you. It just keeps reflecting the growing instability back to you, through tension, through friction, through the quiet, persistent sense that something is misaligned. Most people ignore that signal. They treat it as noise, as something to manage, medicate, or suppress. And the system lets them. Because the only way you learn to read the signal is by experiencing what happens when you ignore it. The illusion of external rescue. There is a belief embedded in most spiritual and religious frameworks that someone, somewhere, is supposed to intervene. That if things get bad enough, a higher intelligence will step in and stop the damage. That free will has a safety net. That the game has referees who will blow the whistle when the rules are violated. But the referees are not coming. Not because they do not exist, but because their job is not to prevent consequence. Their job is to maintain the conditions under which consequence can teach. Imagine a university where every wrong answer on a test was corrected by the professor before it was graded. The student would never fail. They would also never learn. The correction is not mercy. The correction is interference. It robs the student of the exact pressure they need to develop competence. Now scale that up. Imagine a universe where every harmful decision was undone before it produced harm. Every lie corrected before it damaged trust. Every betrayal erased before it fractured relationship. Every act of violence intercepted before it caused pain. What you would have is not paradise. You would have a nursery, and beings in a nursery do not grow up. They stay dependent. They stay incapable. They stay undeveloped. Free will without consequence is not freedom. It is performance. And the universe you are inside is not interested in your performance. It is interested in your transformation. The weight of choice. Here is what most people do not realize about free will. It is not just the ability to choose between two options. It is the responsibility to live inside the outcome of that choice long enough to understand what you have done. That is the part that makes it dangerous. That is the part that makes it developmental. You do not learn from deciding. You learn from living with the decision. A person who lies does not learn from the lie. They learn from the slow erosion of trust that follows. from the distance that builds between them and the people they deceived, from the internal fracture that occurs when their words and their reality no longer align. The lie is instant. The consequence is prolonged. And it is the prolonged experience of consequence that rewrites the internal logic of the person who lied. This is why intervention would be cruel. If someone stepped in and undid the damage every time you made a harmful choice, you would never feel the full weight of what you had done. You would never develop the internal sensitivity required to regulate yourself. You would remain dependent on external correction. And dependence is the opposite of maturity. The goal is not to protect you from consequence. The goal is to let consequence shape you into someone who no longer needs protection. Think about a specific moment in your own life, a choice you made that you knew, even as you were making it, was misaligned. Maybe it was a betrayal. Maybe it was a lie. Maybe it was a moment where you chose comfort over integrity, convenience over responsibility, short-term relief over long-term coherence. You made the choice, and in that moment it felt manageable. It felt survivable. It felt like something you could get away with, and then you had to live with it. Not for a day, not for a week, but for months, maybe years. You had to carry the knowledge of what you had done. You had to navigate the relationships you had fractured. You had to live inside the gap between who you wanted to be and what you had actually chosen. And that gap, that internal tension, that quiet, persistent friction between your ideal and your action, that was the lesson. Not the moment of the choice, the aftermath, the prolonged reckoning, the experience of watching the consequences unfold in slow motion while knowing you were the one who set them in motion. That is how free will teaches, not through instant feedback, through the slow accumulation of living inside your own decisions until the pattern becomes undeniable. The daily mechanics of accountability. Free will is not abstract, it is operational. It shows up in the smallest decisions you make throughout the day. The choice to speak or stay silent. The choice to act with integrity or cut a corner. The choice to honor your word or let it slide because no one will notice. These choices feel insignificant. They feel like they do not matter. But they are the exact training ground where coherence is built or eroded. Because what you do when no one is watching, when the stakes feel low, when the consequence seems distant, that is what reveals the actual structure of your will. Most people reserve their integrity for high-stakes moments. They tell themselves they will make the right choice when it really matters. But that is not how development works. You do not suddenly become coherent under pressure. You reveal the coherence you have already built through repetition in low-pressure environments. A person who lies in small ways does not suddenly tell the truth when the stakes increase. They lie bigger. A person who cuts corners when it is convenient does not suddenly commit to excellence when it is hard. They cut bigger corners. The pattern you build in the margins is the pattern that emerges at the center. This is why free will is so exacting. It does not let you compartmentalize. It does not let you be one person in private and another person in public. It does not let you justify misalignment in small choices and then expect coherence in large ones. The system integrates everything, and the cost of fragmentation shows up in your nervous system, in your relationships, in the quiet, persistent sense that something is not right, even when everything appears functional. You cannot fake coherence. You can only build it, one choice at a time, in moments no one sees, in decisions that feel like they do not count. That is where the structure is formed. And the structure you form in private is the structure that holds you when the pressure increases. Freedom under constraint. Free will does not mean you can do anything. It means you can choose anything within the constraints of the system you are inside. And the constraints are not arbitrary. They are structural. They are the edges of reality that define what is possible, what is sustainable, and what is coherent. You are free to lie, but you are not free to avoid the internal cost of lying. You are free to harm, but you are not free to escape the relational fracture that harm produces. You are free to reject coherence, but you are not free to remain stable while doing so. The system does not punish you for poor choices. The system reflects the consequences of those choices back to you with perfect accuracy. This is what makes free will so precise. It is not random, it is not chaotic, it is lawful. The law is simple. Alignment produces coherence, and misalignment produces friction. The more you choose against your own structural integrity, the more instability you generate. The more you choose in alignment with what you actually are, the more regulation you experience. Most people interpret this as reward and punishment. It is not. It is resonance and dissonance. A guitar string vibrates at a certain frequency. If you try to force it to vibrate at a different frequency, it does not sound wrong because it is being punished. It sounds wrong because it is structurally incompatible with the attempt. You are the same. You have a resonance, a coherence signature. Free will allows you to test every possible frequency until you find the one that does not fracture you. That process is not comfortable, but it is exact. The cost of removing it. There are frameworks, ideologies, and systems that have tried to remove free will, not explicitly, but functionally, by creating environments where choice is so constrained, so controlled, so managed, that the individual becomes a passenger in their own life. These systems always justify the removal the same way. They say it is for protection, for harmony, for the greater good. And in every case, the result is the same: stagnation. When people cannot choose, they do not develop discernment. When they cannot fail, they do not develop resilience. When they cannot experience consequence, they do not develop internal authority. What you get instead is compliance, obedience, dependency. And none of those qualities produce beings capable of navigating complexity on their own. The irony is that the systems designed to protect people from danger end up producing the most fragile populations. Because danger is not the problem. Danger is the training ground. And when you remove the training ground, you do not get safety. You get incompetence. This is why free will was never removed, even during the worst periods of human history. Not because the system is indifferent to suffering, but because removing free will would prevent the exact development that suffering is designed to produce. The goal is not to eliminate harm. The goal is to produce beings capable of choosing not to cause harm, even when no one is watching. That is a completely different outcome, and it requires a completely different process. The ambiguity is intentional. One of the most destabilizing aspects of free will is that it operates in a system where the right choice is not always obvious, where conflicting values create impossible dilemmas, where good intentions produce harmful outcomes, where the information you need to make a perfect decision is never fully available. This is not a bug. This is the design. If every choice came with a clear label, if every decision had an obvious correct answer, if every moral dilemma was resolved by a voice from the sky, you would not be choosing. You would be following instructions. And following instructions does not develop judgment. Judgment is the ability to make decisions in the absence of certainty, to weigh competing priorities, to tolerate ambiguity, to act with incomplete information, and live with the possibility that you might be wrong. That is the skill the system is trying to cultivate, and it can only be cultivated in an environment where certainty is withheld. This is why prayer does not produce answers the way most people expect, why meditation does not deliver clarity in the form of instructions, why insight does not arrive as a checklist. The universe is not trying to tell you what to do, it is trying to teach you how to decide, and the only way to learn how to decide is to make decisions that matter, in situations where the outcome is uncertain, and live with the results long enough to understand the pattern. Most people experience ambiguity as a lack, as if the universe forgot to include the answer key. as if clarity is being withheld unfairly. But ambiguity is not withholding. It is the space where discernment develops. It is the gap between stimulus and response where you are forced to engage your own capacity for evaluation. A child who is told exactly what to do in every situation does not develop the ability to assess context, weigh consequences, or navigate novelty. They develop dependency. They become skilled at compliance, not competence. And when the instructions stop coming, when the authority is no longer present to direct them, they collapse. Not because they are incapable, but because they were never required to develop the internal structure that allows them to function without external guidance. Ambiguity is the condition that forces that development. It is the absence of certainty that requires you to build your own evaluative capacity. To learn how to read a situation, assess risk, predict consequences, and commit to a course of action even when you cannot guarantee the outcome. That is agency, not the ability to do whatever you want, the ability to decide what to do when no one is telling you the answer. The friction of competing values. Here is where ambiguity becomes most acute, in situations where there is no clean choice, where every option carries cost, where honoring one value requires violating another, where you cannot win, only choose which loss you are willing to absorb. These are the moments that reveal the depth of your coherence, because when the choices are easy, when one option is clearly better than the other, decision-making is mechanical. You calculate, compare, and select. But when the choices are impossible, when every path forward requires sacrifice, when you are forced to prioritize between competing goods or navigate between layered harms, that is when your actual values become visible. Not the values you claim, the values you enact. A person says they value honesty, but when honesty would destroy a relationship, cost them their job, expose them to harm, do they still choose it? A person says they value compassion, but when compassion would enable dysfunction, protect someone from necessary consequence, perpetuate harm in the long term, do they still choose it? A person says they value loyalty, but when loyalty would require them to betray their own integrity, participate in something misaligned, compromise their coherence, do they still choose it? These are not hypothetical dilemmas. These are the daily mechanics of being human in a high-pressure developmental environment. And the system does not resolve them for you. It does not send a sign. It does not make the answer obvious. It leaves you inside the tension, and it waits to see what you choose. And whatever you choose, you have to live with. Not just the external consequences, the internal ones. The knowledge of what you prioritized. The awareness of what you were willing to sacrifice and what you were not. That knowledge becomes part of your structure. It shapes how you see yourself, how you trust yourself, how you navigate the next impossible choice. This is how coherence is refined, not through easy decisions, through the accumulated weight of hard ones, through the repetition of choosing under pressure, living with the outcome, recalibrating based on what you learn, and choosing again the next time the tension arises. The ambiguity does not go away. You just get better at navigating it. And that capacity, that ability to hold tension without collapsing, to make decisions without certainty, to remain integrated even when the choice is impossible, that is what the system is building inside you. Responsibility without blame. Here is the distinction most people miss. Free will makes you responsible for your choices. It does not make you to blame for the system you were born into. You did not choose to be human. You did not choose the distortions embedded in the developmental environment you are inside. You did not choose the inherited trauma, the cultural conditioning, the genetic predispositions, or the structural limitations that shaped your early years. None of that was your fault. But the choices you make now, inside those conditions, are yours. This is the razor's edge. You are not responsible for the hand you were dealt, but you are responsible for how you play it. and the system does not grade you on the hand. It grades you on the coherence you manage to build with what you were given. A person born into wealth is not more developed than a person born into poverty. A person born into stability is not more awake than a person born into chaos. Development is not measured by starting conditions. It is measured by the choices made under pressure, by the integrity maintained in the face of consequence, by the coherence built in the absence of certainty. You were given free will in a high-pressure environment, and you were never told the rules in advance. That is not cruelty. That is the exact condition required to produce beings who can self-regulate without external enforcement. What free will produces. When free will is allowed to operate without interference over long enough timescales, it produces something very specific. It produces beings who choose coherence, not because they are forced to, but because they have experienced the cost of fragmentation and decided it is not sustainable. This is the goal. Not obedience, not compliance, not even goodness in the moral sense. The goal is self-authoring coherence, a state where your internal regulation is so refined that you no longer require external enforcement to remain aligned. Think about what that means. It means that after enough cycles of choosing, failing, experiencing consequence, recalibrating, and choosing again, you begin to stabilize. Not because someone is managing you, but because you have learned through direct experience what choices produce coherence and what choices produce fracture. That is a completely different kind of being than one who is good because they are monitored, one who is kind because they are rewarded, one who is honest because they are afraid of punishment. Those are conditioned responses. They collapse the moment the external pressure is removed. But a being who has internalized coherence through the repetition of consequence, who has felt the difference between alignment and misalignment in their own nervous system, who has built their integrity through the friction of real stakes, that being is stable. Not because they are controlled, because they are coherent. And coherence has a signature. It is not abstract, it is somatic. You can feel it in your body when you are aligned and when you are not. Think about the last time you lied. Not a small social lie, a real one that mattered, one that created distance between you and someone you cared about. Do you remember what happened in your chest? The tightness, the compression, the sense that something contracted and did not release. That was not guilt in the moral sense. That was structural dissonance, your system registering the fracture between what you said and what was true. Now think about the last time you told a hard truth, one that cost you something, one that would have been easier to avoid, one that required you to risk discomfort, conflict, or loss in order to remain aligned. Do you remember what happened after? Not immediately, but in the hours that followed. The sense of expansion, the quiet steadiness, the feeling that even though the situation was difficult, you were not fractured. That was coherence, your system registering alignment. The body knows before the mind does. It knows when you are in integrity and when you are performing. It knows when you are choosing from coherence and when you are choosing from fear. And it reflects that knowledge back to you through sensation, through tension, through the quality of your breath, through the steadiness or instability of your nervous system. Free will allows you to override that signal, to choose misalignment even when your body is telling you it will cost you. And the system lets you, because the only way you learn to trust the signal is by ignoring it enough times to feel the full weight of the consequence. Eventually, if you pay attention, you stop needing to learn the same lesson over and over. You start recognizing the early signs of misalignment. You start feeling the tightness before the fracture becomes catastrophic. You start choosing coherence, not because it is virtuous, but because fragmentation is exhausting and you no longer have the tolerance for it. That is maturity. Not moral perfection, structural preference for alignment, because you have lived inside misalignment long enough to know it is not sustainable. The progression of self-regulation, development through free will is not linear. It is cyclical. You do not learn a lesson once and move on. You learn it at different depths, in different contexts, under different pressures. And each time you encounter the same pattern, you have the opportunity to choose differently based on what you learned the last time. In the beginning, you choose from instinct, from conditioning, from whatever programming was installed in you before you had the capacity to question it. You do not even realize you are choosing. You are simply reacting, and the consequences of those reactions begin to accumulate. Then, at some point, you become aware that you are choosing. You start to notice the gap between stimulus and response. You realize that you have options, that you are not entirely determined by your history, your environment, or your impulses. And that awareness changes everything. Now you are responsible, not just for what you do, but for what you choose to do, knowing that you could have chosen differently. The weight increases, the pressure increases, and with it, the opportunity for development. At this stage, most people still choose poorly, but now they know they are choosing poorly. They feel the dissonance, they recognize the fracture, and that recognition, that awareness of misalignment even as you enact it, is the beginning of internal authority. You cannot regulate what you cannot perceive, and you cannot perceive what you have not yet experienced. So the system lets you choose misalignment consciously, lets you feel the cost consciously, lets you live with the consequences consciously until the pattern becomes so clear that choosing differently is no longer an act of willpower. It is simply the path of least resistance. That is when free will stops feeling dangerous, not because the stakes have lowered, but because your capacity to navigate them has increased. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are no longer overriding your internal signals in order to chase short-term relief. You are choosing from coherence, because coherence is what your system naturally moves toward when it is not being hijacked by fear, conditioning, or unresolved pressure. This does not mean you stop making mistakes. It means you stop making the same mistakes for the same reasons. It means you develop the capacity to learn from consequence without needing to repeat the entire cycle. It means you begin to trust your own discernment because it has been tested, refined, and proven reliable through repetition in real conditions. That is what free will produces. Not saints, not perfect beings, not people who never fail. It produces beings who fail, learn, recalibrate, and stabilize, who make decisions based on lived understanding rather than inherited belief, who regulate themselves because they have experienced the cost of dysregulation and decided it is no longer acceptable. The safety you were looking for. Most people want to be saved from the danger of free will. They want someone to step in and prevent them from making catastrophic choices. They want the safety net, the override, the cosmic parent who will catch them before they fall too far. But the safety you are looking for is not external. It is internal, and it cannot be given to you. It can only be built, slowly, through the exact process you are trying to avoid. Every time you make a choice and live with the consequence, you are learning. Every time you experience the cost of misalignment, you are recalibrating. Every time you feel the difference between coherence and chaos in your own body, you are developing the sensitivity required to self-regulate. That sensitivity is the safety, not protection from harm, but the capacity to navigate complexity without fracturing, the ability to hold tension without collapsing, the skill to make decisions under ambiguity, and remain integrated regardless of the outcome. You were not given free will so you could be safe. You were given free will so you could become the kind of being who does not need to be saved. The system trusts you. Here is the part that most people find hard to accept. The system you are inside trusts you more than you trust yourself. It gave you the ability to destroy your own life, to harm others, to fracture relationships, communities, entire societies. It allowed you to be born into a world where suffering is real, where stakes are high, where consequences are permanent. And it did not intervene. Not because it does not care, but because it knows something you are still learning. It knows that you are not as fragile as you think, that you are capable of more than you realize, that the pressure you are under is not crushing you, it is shaping you, and that the weapon you were given at birth, the one you have been afraid of your whole life, is not meant to be taken away. It is meant to be mastered. The choice you are making right now, you are not reading this by accident. You are not here because the algorithm decided to show you something interesting. You are here because some part of you is ready to stop asking why you were given free will and start asking what you are going to do with it. That shift is not intellectual, it is positional. It is the moment you stop seeing yourself as a victim of the system and start seeing yourself as a participant in it. The moment you stop waiting for someone to fix the conditions and start building coherence inside them. This is not a call to action. This is a recognition of what is already happening. You are already choosing. Every second, every breath, every response. The question is whether you are choosing consciously, or whether you are letting the momentum of habit, fear, and conditioning make the choice for you. Free will is not something you activate, it is something you inhabit. And the more you inhabit it, the more you realize that it was never the danger. The danger was thinking you could avoid it. Pause for a moment. Right now, not later, not after you finish watching. Now, notice your breath. Are you breathing fully? Or are you holding tension somewhere in your chest, your throat, your shoulders? That tension is not random. It is the accumulated residue of choices you have been avoiding, conversations you need to have but have not initiated, truths you need to speak but have kept quiet, alignments you need to make but have postponed because the cost feels too high. Your body is holding the score, and it will continue holding it until you make the choice that releases the pressure. This is not about perfection, this is about honesty, about looking at the places where you know you are out of alignment and admitting it, not to anyone else, to yourself. Because you cannot correct a misalignment you refuse to acknowledge. Think about one choice you have been avoiding, one decision you know you need to make, but have been delaying. It does not have to be dramatic. It does not have to be life-altering. It just has to be true. A conversation you need to have, a boundary you need to set, a commitment you need to honor or release, a pattern you need to interrupt. You know what it is. You have known for a while. The knowing is not the problem. The choosing is the problem. And the reason you have not chosen is because you are waiting for the conditions to be easier, for the cost to be lower, for someone else to make the first move so you do not have to carry the full weight of the decision. But the conditions are not going to get easier. The cost is not going to decrease, and no one else is going to make the choice for you. That is the design. You are inside a system that will let you delay indefinitely, that will let you avoid, suppress, rationalize, and postpone for as long as you choose to. And it will reflect the cost of that delay back to you with perfect accuracy. Through tension, through friction, through the quiet, persistent awareness that you are not living in integrity. The question is how long you are willing to carry that weight before you decide it is easier to make the choice than to continue avoiding it. No one is coming. The intervention you are waiting for is not going to happen. Not because the universe is indifferent, but because the intervention would undo the only thing that matters, your development. You are inside a system that values your growth more than your comfort, that prioritizes your coherence over your safety, that will let you fall, let you fail, let you fracture, because it knows that the only way you learn to stand is by getting back up on your own. This is not abandonment, this is trust. The kind of trust that refuses to interfere, even when interference would feel like love. The kind of trust that lets you hold the weapon, even when you do not yet know how to use it. The kind of trust that believes you are capable of becoming something worth the risk. And you are. You have always been worth the risk. That is why free will was never removed. That is why the system never stepped in. That is why you are still here, still choosing, still capable of deciding what happens next. The weapon is still in your hand, and it always will be. This episode did not come to convince you. It came to place you. If something in you recognized this, not believed it, not agreed with it, but remembered, write "I awaken" in the comments. Not as a signal to others, as a signal to yourself. The hierarchy responds to readiness, and readiness is always internal.